Hello? Check. Hello, check. 1, 2, 3. Check, 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 check. Hey, good evening, everyone. This is your host, Kapil Deev, with an interesting show. An interesting show for the Zena family. Zena family, a global family, which has got about 50,000 members across 34 countries. So I'm here today to host a wonderful lady, a career diplomat. I'm here to talk to a wonderful lady who has served in the High Commission as a diplomat, as a senior foreign services officer, as a strategic consultant, representing government in various countries. So let's welcome an exclusive show on the Zoom exclusive for the Zena family. Let's welcome Sangeeta Bahadur ji. How are you, ma'am? Good evening.
Hi, Kapil. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing. Thank you so much. So first of all, you look so pretty, and people will take you for an actress and diplomat.
Well, that was initially one of my ambitions, but unfortunately never could follow it. So I got stuck in the role of a diplomat, but ambition was always much more than that, wider than that.
So ma'am, see, usually when you go to the Delhi circles, people have this own way to things. Delhi is a hub for a lot of these high political and diplomats and social beings and all. So where was your actual childhood from? How did this thing about becoming a diplomat come into your head? Were you inspired by somebody, or had some of your family members inspired you, or it was just your choice from within?
It's a very funny story, and well, it's still something that people in the ministry, it's become a sort of a legend, because I was foolish enough to actually repeat this story to the foreign secretary of that time. So essentially, where I grew up, I have been a gypsy from birth. So my father was also in government. He was in the income tax. So literally every 2 to 3 years, you moved cities within India. And since then, of course, like across the globe, once I started working myself. So I was born in Kolkata, then we moved to UP, then to Gujarat, to Maharashtra, to Madhya Pradesh. So it's been like a very checkered kind of a childhood for me. So my father was not one of those who thought that a stable and steady existence was necessary to do well in life. So he just dragged us along wherever he went, and it was fun. And sorry,
it's you learn by your process of walking the life.
Yeah. So when people ask me where you're from, it becomes a very, very difficult question for me to answer. But ultimately, of course, as happens to everyone, I also grew up. And at that time, my father was posted as Chief Commissioner of Income Tax in Mumbai. And then, it was like, so what do you want to do in life? Because he was one of those people who thought it was even more important for a girl to stand on her own 2 feet rather than, a boy. So it was like, you've got to do something sensible with your life. So I, of course, being rather young and stupid, I said, okay, then in that case, I want to become an air hostess. And you can imagine, I was already doing my post-graduation in my final year, and there was a silent civil war in the house. My parents said no. They said, what nonsense is this? And can you imagine doing something like that after finishing your post-graduation? And basically, it was like over a dead body. No, no daughter of ours is going to become a glorified waitress. So, and I was like, no, this is what I want to do. That's it. And so we sort of, for a month or more, we were not talking to each other, and it became a major issue at home. thankfully for us, all of us, I would say not just me, a very old friend of my dad's, he came for a visit, and he must have felt, the tension around the place, and he said, "What's going on?"
Oh.
And so my father was like, "Dekho zara isko, what a stupid girl, after doing a post-graduation, she wants to become an air hostess. You talk to her." Like I have not been able to convince her at all. And so he was sensible enough to actually ask me, he said, "But why? Why do you want to become an air hostess?" And I said, "Because I want to travel the world." And he said, "Oh, if that is the case, then why don't you join the foreign service, and do it in style? So rather than serving,
Oh.
people, be served yourself, and, have, a great time." I had never heard of the foreign service till then, because, we are a very ivory tower kind of service. So you don't really come across many diplomats. So
Right.
when I heard that, I was like, wow, that sounds great. Why not? So that was when I started sort of looking at the civil services, and I told my parents, "I'll join only if I get this, otherwise forget it. Then I'll either become
Okay.
an air hostess, I'll do hotel management,
So
or
the
become a
rest,
PR, or whatever."
so the rest is the history, as we
Rest
see
is
that.
history.
How
Thankfully for everyone concerned, I made it.
so?
So,
Well, I want to know the intricacies of the foreign services, because we probably get to see the movies as to how we deal with in terms of terror, in terms of extremism, in terms of various political debates. So, do actual foreign services have a role to play in all these things, in negotiations, in dealing with the terror organizations, or dealing with trade commissions? How is it? How has the entire that journey been?
okay. Now, first of all, just let me tell you that just the way the movies, especially the Bollywood movies, get it all wrong as far as the police service is concerned, it's exactly the same with the foreign service.
Oh.
Every time I see a diplomat or a foreign service officer or an embassy official represented on screen, I just cringe because it's like nothing like what we do, where, even the setup that they show, and the way the kind of things you're expected to do as a foreign service officer, it's all like completely mythical in movies. So essentially,
Okay,
it's
okay.
a far more, I would say, complicated kind of a role that we play, because it depends a lot also on where you're posted, right? So if you're
Correct.
posted in a very safe country, for example, where terror or war, etc., is a very distant possibility. So your role becomes more focused on, say, political relations with that country, on the economic relations, how to enhance business, investment, etc. Then consular work is always, a priority for all of us. So whether it is Indians living in that country, or wanting to go from that country to India, or any problems that they may be encountering in the process, all that is also something that we do. And plus, of course, wherever there is a need for a security dialogue, wherever there is a
Excellent.
need for any understanding to be reached in any field, including cultural, which is called soft diplomacy now. So all this becomes a part of our arsenal. If you're in a difficult country, in the sense that there is a war going on, or there's a possibility of one, or there is that terrorism is a big issue in that place, or for example, I mean, the one example I can give you of a very difficult posting is Pakistan.
Oh, you posted in
So
Pakistan.
yes. So it is, that kind of a place would really sort of test your mettle, because now, of course, things are better because we are not allowing these things to happen, and we are taking very firm stances. But earlier, even say 10 years ago, being a diplomat in Islamabad was a very, very tough thing, both personally and professionally. Because professionally, you came across all kinds of hassles. Nothing worked. You just went round and round and round in the same circle, but you had to keep trying on every front. And personally, it was very tough because wherever you went as a diplomat, you'd be followed by, by the police, by the secret
Agent.
service. Yes. And very often your family would be harassed. You must have heard of instances of, diplomats themselves, or say their spouses or their children being kidnapped. And for 24 hours, 48 hours, you have no idea where they are, what is happening. So it was a very, very tough, situation. But then there are, other, like if you posted, for example, in Africa, that's a very different profile, that you would probably be focusing far more on developmental partnership and aid, etc., etc. Infrastructure that is happening. So it's all, Europe is again, very different. It would be more about investments, about business, about, multilateral cooperation, etc. So, so the developed world and developing world and
two different stories.
Two very different stories. And your role.
So, what was the toughest of the diplomat services? Which country was the most toughest for you to be a diplomat that you were posted for?
I would say probably, I have fortunately or unfortunately never had to face very tough postings. So like out of my 7 postings, 6 were in Europe, and one in Mexico, the only one I've done outside this area. So I have, for example, never really had to worry about, terror attacks or terrorist activities, or these very tough war-torn zone situations, etc., evacuation, etc. Not really. But from that point of view, perhaps Belarus, where I was ambassador about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And that is, I'm not saying it was a bad posting. In fact, quite to the contrary, I really loved my time there, and it was an amazing place to be in. But that was the one country in which we faced things like, in 2020, when President Lukashenko rigged the elections and he won again. And after that, there were these huge protests, like every day, literally for the first month or two, there would be thousands upon thousands of people blocking the roads, having these rallies, being arrested, shot at, hit, killed, arrested. So it was a very, very tough situation. Then after that, during that time, for several weekends, because weekends were the time when more people would get together, so they would sort of switch off all internet connections, and it was like impossible to get through to anyone, get back to headquarters. There were tanks in the roads. There were, soldiers wearing black, marching all over the place. So it was, so it was a difficult time. Ultimately, of course, because how long can you sustain a movement when the government is, doing its best to just,
So
cut it
out. Of all your service in 7 different postings that you had as a diplomat, and have you seen the perception about people for India change over this?
Oh, tremendously, tremendously. I love telling this story when in my first posting, which was in Spain, like it was for your first posting is usually for you to learn the language. So they post you to a country. So my allocated foreign language was Spanish. So I was posted to Madrid. And at that time, it was like India was virtually unknown. Perhaps they may know your name, the name of the country, but apart from that, there was, very little. The only other thing they sort of heard from time to time on the news, apart from all kinds of negative stuff, would be that India is a land of cows, and that cows were protected there. So the sister of the Spanish queen at that time, she was a great animal rights conservationist kind of a thing. So every year, she would actually send hundreds of old cows to India by plane, so that, she thought that they would be safe here, nobody would kill them. And I remember a time when, like me, and there were several of us, trainee officers there. So 3-4 of us were going somewhere in a car or something, and we stopped at a petrol station to get petrol put into the car. So the guy was very, the one who was doing it, he seemed very intrigued because he could see that although we all spoke good Spanish, we were obviously not Spaniards. So he
Okay.
said, where are you people from? And I said, oh, we are Indians. And he said, ah, you are the people who dance around fires wearing feathers in your hair. So that
You thought the Red Indians.
everyone was the same. So from
Okay.
to a point now where the Indian ambassador in most countries would be like, a privileged person, in the sense that you just have to ask for a meeting with anyone and you'd get it like ASAP. You would be consulted and you would be offered, cooperation agendas, your projects, what they would like you to do. And, it was instant recognition. You said you're the Indian ambassador, Indian High Commissioner, immediately you'd be given that kind of respect, that kind of, relevance. And it was true not just for diplomats, but Indians living in any country, because as it is, like, Indians have always been respected for the fact that they are a non-controversial community. They do their work, keep their heads down, don't get involved in, like unnecessary politicking or whatever it might be. But now it is actually expected of you to stand up for your country. You're sort of, that makes you special rather than troublesome. You're given that kind of recognition. The moment you say you're from India, you can immediately see people perk up. And, quite often I've been specifically called by, say, the foreign minister or the prime minister or whatever, to be told that, look, this is what we are trying to do, and we'd like India to take a lead. Can you help us out? Can you talk to your headquarters? So it's like that kind of an arc that we have seen from a
That's a change, transitional change.
total. It's been a sea change, totally.
So, how fair enough that you had a great service as a diplomat, 7 different postings, and various experiences that you had. Your experience as being a women diplomat, how did you feel that that gender bias or people have been accommodated to you for being a woman, or being extra special, or being maybe rude sometimes? What was it being a woman in the diplomacy?
Uh, Frankly, I have never felt the gender bias. I've always thought that if anything, women officers are given a very special treatment by the ministry. If you choose to interpret it as bias, well, it's a good bias in that sense. So, the ministry tries, first of all, to be very even-handed when they are, in distribution of work. So some of the most high-profile officers in the ministry are and have been women. We are, in fact, one of the only high profile and big ministries in the country where we've already had, 3 or 4 female foreign secretaries, right? Have you ever heard of a female home secretary? No. Have you ever heard of a female finance secretary, defense secretary? No. So we have been a path-breaking ministry in that sense. And when it comes to postings, etc., um, some of the uh, really important postings also have gone to women. And in any case, they always take care that, they try not to send you to very, very difficult places unless you want to. So it is, I would say that they try to be as even-handed as they can be. Of course, to tell you a little funny story about this, I remember when I was quite young at that time, just been in service for maybe 4 years, something like that, under secretary at that time. And we used to have this little club of women officers in the ministry who would meet for lunch from time to time, so you're having lunch anyway, so you just had it together. So some of them were maybe a couple of years senior to me, some were 1 or 2 years junior. So it was, so mostly in these forums, you discuss a lot of issues about your personal life as well, your professional life, how the ministry was treating you. And this exactly somebody, came up with the subject of whether the ministry was biased against women. So most of us were saying, no, we are having a great time and all that. But one of a very ambitious officers, I will not name her because, she's very eminent, and now she's retired, of course, but a very nice person. So she said, no, I think the ministry and the officers in particular, the senior men officers are very biased against women. And we were like, hey, really? How come? What? So she said, I'll just tell you what. And she said, I was posted in China at that time, and my first posting or a second posting, something like that. And she said, I was pregnant with my first child. So I was a very dedicated officer. I sort of worked till the last possible day. And then, in those days, it used to be a 3-month maternity leave. So she said, when
Oh.
just the day before my child was born, I went on leave. And then, like about a month later, I thought the baby was old enough for me to come back to work because my mother was there and she was taking care of him and all that. So she said, I just, came to office and I met the ambassador and I said, sir, I'd like to come back to work and all. And can you imagine what he said? He said, don't do that. You have a little baby to look after. Take your full 3 months and then come back. Can you imagine how biased and prejudiced? And we were like, really?
That's
Okay,
a soft
call
side of the
that
story.
biased and prejudiced, and yes.
So, what is that one breakthrough that you would that you've done being a career diplomat, which you still feel proud that this is what I've done in my service,
I think I'm
just help
proud.
the country, or
Yes, I'm proud
negotiation
of what
that
I'm
really was
doing.
done by you, or something that you can share.
Well, you do so many things on a day-to-day basis because I, in particular, like always went out of my way to, help whoever came to me with whether it was an Indian or whether it was, a person from that country. But I would say that among memorable things that I have done has been to head the Nehru Center in London, which is our flagship
Oh,
cultural center there. And I was there for nearly 4 years, in fact, and we just changed the entire um, way in which we interacted. We changed the with the public. We made it a far more popular, modern, and interesting place to visit by changing, the kind of programs we brought to them, and we really helped. And then I would say that Belarus, as I said, was a difficult, challenging posting, but also because of that, very, very interesting. And I happened to be posted there at the height of COVID, so it was the
oh,
one of the
stuff.
yes, yeah. So I myself had a very bad attack of COVID there. I nearly died. But before that happened, I was like
You
very
live another day. We all live
sorry.
another day, and we all live another day, which is why you're
Oh,
today, right now, celebrating this exclusive Zoom show with you.
thank you. Absolutely. I bless my stars, thank God, every day for every day of, extra life that I got after that. But before that, before I fell so badly ill, that was the time when the Vande Bharat flights were being organized and people were being
Okay.
evacuated. So we handled the evacuation of all, like it was a very popular place. It still is, I suppose, for medical students for some reason. They, all of East Europe. So CIS countries, East Europe, that these are places where a lot of Indian medical students go. So we handled the evacuation of the whole Jingbang and also of other Indians who were, who were stuck there, wanted to get home. That went off quite successfully, and I'm very, very proud of the way my embassy handled everything. And then, as I said, during that very difficult phase, not only did we keep all of our officers and staff safe, but we also sort of were in constant contact with the ministry and trying to sort of modulate our own response to the situation. The EU ambassadors all there had very clear instructions from headquarters to monitor the situation, to stand up in opposition to that. Now, Belarus is a country with which we have always had a good equation. They've always been friends. They've always supported us in multilateral fora. So we did not want to, we didn't want to rock the boat to the extent that we made an enemy out of them. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that our, disapproval of what was going on was also sort of
Being
conveyed.
heard.
It was a very
Being heard.
difficult tightrope to tread, but we managed.
So ma'am, now the second phase of your life, post-retirement, and that got into being an author and a writer, or how has the writing side always been there with you, or it is just because the experience that you want have come across as a diplomat that you want to start sharing about it, and talk us through that your journey as an author.
My journey as an author has been, I would say, very different, perhaps, from a lot of authors who in the civil services, who either sort of share their experiences as an officer, or things that they've seen done. So it becomes like a sort of a fictionalized autobiography in many cases, or at least based on their experiences. I chose to go the exact opposite way, and I decided to write heroic fantasy, which was a genre, and which is a genre, I think, which is not very well known in India, because, and by heroic fantasy, I don't mean mythology really, because mythology is something that, yes, a lot of Indian writers do write about, but I chose to sort of go the way of Lord of the Rings. So create an entire cosmos, an entire universe, an entire world, and a story which is, I would say, of course, as they say, nothing is in this world is ever original, but to the extent possible, it is a completely new story. The book had 4 parts to it, and each of them like about 500 pages. So you can imagine the kind of work that went into it. So starting from, I started writing the first book at a point in my life where on the personal level, things were not working out for me. And a whole lot of, problems were happening in my marriage and various other respects. And so this became a kind of a cathartic experience for me. I had been writing when I was in high school, in college, like very cute romantic novels, very Mills and Boons kind of stuff, which I never somehow got around to, even sending to a publisher. But then there was a long break of a decade or more where I didn't really write anything much. And then I discovered the genre of fantasy, and I was like, wow, this is what really inspires me, in which I really enjoy writing, because it gives so much scope to your imagination.
So do you see this being manifested to become a cinema eventually?
I hope so, because if you read those books, like the first comment anybody makes is that these are such visual books, like you read something and you can instantly, and that's how the story came to me. I'd be sitting down and writing, and it would actually be like I was watching a movie. So I just sort of record what I was seeing. So I've been hoping that someone adventurous, somebody who wants, like now that you have such amazing movies like Bahubali, etc., on the Indian screen. So this would be an even bigger production, I would say, if somebody wants to take it over. So I'm waiting to see, where. And my new book is coming out this year, hopefully. It's a standalone heroic fantasy, yes, but also historical fantasy. So it's actually based in a period in ancient India, about 500 BC. And many of the characters are real, but it's a total, it's a complete fantasy based on what I read of historical events. And I sort of, gave it an alternative history kind of a thing, and mixed some spirituality, some fantasy, etc. So that's the smaller story.
So I wish to manifest. I wish to manifest a book reading session with you sometime.
Very soon. That'll be great fun.
So, ma'am, so now your career as a diplomat, now as an author. So, where does the ball rolling to? Where the future holds for you?
Well, I'm still sort of tentatively trying to find
is acting there in the kitchen as well?
an opportunity, and I would love to. And what I'm trying at the moment is to see what works for me. So I'm, doing some writing, some commission writing work. I'm also, delivering series of lectures, etc., at various universities. I'm sort of doing some strategic advisory role with various organizations, and also open to mentoring of like younger people who which I'm already doing informally at the universities, etc., where I'm going. So let's see where that takes me. And plus, of course, the writing will continue as soon as because I've been back in India only for about 8 months, and the initial few months were very, very difficult. Again, because one, retiring itself is such a huge shock to
Challenging.
and a challenge. And suddenly from working 24/7, you are down to sort of, ab main kya karoon types. And secondly, again, on the personal front, things went very drastically wrong. So for the first 4 or 5 months, I was in a state of complete sort of bewilderment, a lot of grief, a lot of pain. And so now that I'm coming out of it, so this is the time when I'm trying to figure out what the second innings should look like, and hopefully trying to achieve it.
I'm sure the second innings will be wonderful as much as the first innings has been for you, because you're a very strong lady. The way you narrated all the stories, and the strength of women, like the Kali, is epitomized through you and your performances. And before we close this the talk, one final question. It's a personal question. Like, how do you see India in the next 10 years, the next 10, 20 years? Because of your realistic understanding about, see, the foreign understandings about India and the performance of India particularly. How do you see India as a country for the next 10 decade or two?
There is a school of thought in India which thinks that, we have really achieved nothing much, and this is just the natural progression of a country, and that, when we talk about where we're headed in the next 20-25 years, it's more of a boast than anything else. I do not belong to that school of thought. I have seen what we have already achieved as a country. I, like from my childhood days, when, just being able to survive, to have a reasonably okay life, to be able to go to a good school, to eat reasonably good food was enough, and things were our country was still recovering from the way the British had left us in the Fragile Five, when they went. And India, at that time was regarded as an impossible dream by many people. People expected us to break up. People expected us to, drift into absolute poverty. The way our population was growing, the way, the thing was that our industries had been completely destroyed, education systems had been completely destroyed. So it was and India really at that stage, even when I was in school, we had really nothing much to offer except high moral ground, and those kind of lofty ethical principles, etc. And so everyone expected, nobody really took us seriously in that sense. It was like, yeah,
Right.
good boy, pat on the head, and you are like, you will not create any trouble for us. That's good enough. From that, I've seen the country, as I think Shashi Tharoor puts it very picturesquely in most cases, when he talks about how, in the 60s,
He's one of my favorite politicians.
favorite politician, favorite author, I must say, favorite
Author as well, yeah.
author. I think his the great Indian story is a masterpiece that nobody can equal. So when he talks about how, from talking about how many elephants you had, and whether there was a snake charmer in your family, and and I've been through that, so I know. From that to a stage where, in the 90s and the early 2000s, if you said to a stranger that you were from India, they would whip out their laptop and say, like, okay, then repair it, you suddenly with the powers. And from that, I think
Okay.
still come a long way after that, because now, for the first time, India is showing the confidence to toe our own line rather than somebody else's. We have the confidence to stand up and be counted, say that, yeah, this is our century. What we want to do. This is
Last
what
century.
is in India first. And that is a huge mindset shift, and that is what is taking us further and further. We are like, whether it is in economic growth terms, whether it is in terms of political influence, in terms of defense capabilities, whatever it might be. I mean, I think that in the next 25 years, we are going to be a superpower, and there's no stopping us. There's no way that, whatever the critics may say, the carping Cassandras, as they are called, but the fact is that we are going places, and we are climbing the ladder so fast that in 25 years we'll be among either at the top or at least on the second rung. So we are. I have full faith in this country, full faith in what we are trying to achieve, full faith in our people, and I know it's going to just happen.
So with this full faith and the full premonition that you have given that India is going to be a superpower in the next 25 years, thank you so much for this wonderful time that you've had with the Zena family, ma'am, and empowered by your talk, empowered by your presence, and the extended Women's Day that we have today. And happy Women's Day week. And thank you so much for empowering us with your wonderful talk. And we wish you all the best in your career as an author and as a speaker and as a mentor too. And that's it for today, guys. And that's for the exclusive Zoom for the Zena family. It's me, your favorite host, Kapil, all the way from Hyderabad, signing off for you. Have a great